That there is a global audience, including the local attendees. Mr. Suresh Subramaniam, the President of the National Olympic Committee, is also logged on. Thank you very much all. Yes, this is the third debate in the second OVEP debate 2020. This is the third day. This is the Super 8 stage, and this will be a battle between two regional capital city teams. There's one from Jaffna, the Northern Peninsula capital, and the other from the Central Hills. So interesting to note that these two teams have done really well. One is Chundikuli Girls College from Jaffna. They were placed third into the Super 8 stage, and Hillwood College Kandy were placed sixth. Just a reminder to the two teams that this is a debate format encounter, and not speaking of a text or teleprompter or whatever it is, not in the speech form. I hope you understand that very well. And the time taken, in total, 3 speakers will get 9 minutes, divided 3 minutes each. And in case you exceed that 9 minutes, the extra time will be deducted from the summary time of 3 minutes. I hope the message is clear to the two participating teams. We've got a very informed panel of judges. They are very well experienced, they are committed, they are very knowledgeable, and they are really going to judge your performances. So thank you very much, the panel of judges, for being involved as usual. Just to take a look at the two teams, which would really be very interesting. Chundikuli girls from Jaffna. There's Joanne Sophia Paul Suresh. There's Akrapi Arival Zaban. Then Berlini Kumaravel and Abhinaya Gobi Shanger, with Mrs. Anuloja Rohan as the teacher in charge. For Hillwood Kandy, there's Isuri Mapa, Swairi Atukorala, Sanitma Jayasuriya, together with Medini Veerasinghe, accompanied by Miss Manoja Sri Ranjan as the teacher in charge. Interesting topics here for Chundikuli girls. It is about sports is an effective tool to teach the senses of tolerance to the vulnerable youth groups, while Hillwood will focus on this item. Sports is an effective tool to teach the senses of human solidarity to the vulnerable youth groups. You need to be properly prepared and very well presented in this context. So take this opportunity to open the debate and cordial invite Joanne Sophia Paul Suresh from Chundikuli Girls.
Good afternoon, dear judges, members of the Kandy Hillwood College, and my dear audience. This is the captain of Chundikuli Girls College. This house strongly believes that sport is an effective tool to teach the senses of tolerance to the vulnerable group of youth. According to the thesis titled as the potential of sports for socially vulnerable youth, it says a vast amount of literature reporting the association of organized sports participation shows a range of positive health-related, educated, psychosocial positive outcomes in youth. But there is also a concept of social vulnerability, which broadly refers to disconnected, distorted young people, which further can also be eliminated by sports. Teaching tolerance through sports is not a new concept. On the turn of 20th century, the father of modern Olympics, Pierre Coubertin, has laid foundation for this Olympic ideology. But this has come into consideration very recently due to the minority discrimination and impairment. Coming to the phrase vulnerable youth, vulnerable youths can be divided into three groups. First one, marginalized youths, which means the youth groups, and second one is the youth groups with transient problems. And the third one, youthhood pre-designed as vulnerable stage due to biological transition into adulthood. So, as the first speaker, I will be analyzing into the point how sport can be used to teach the sense of tolerance to the marginalized young people. And my second speaker will be deriving into the point how youth with transient problems can be taught the sense of tolerance. And the third and the final speaker will be talking on how among the different stages of life, the youthhood is pre-designed as a vulnerable stage due to the biological transition into adulthood. Coming to my point, who are marginalized young people? The young ones whose everyday life has been or may be characterized with mental disorders, lack of attachment to school, and lack of positive adult relationships. A recent report says that the people who engage in sports have less chance for suicide during this COVID-19 pandemic situation. I would like to state an example where sport has acted as a tool to create the sense of tolerance. Justina Kowalczyk won a gold medal at the Olympic at Seoul. She ran a pace of 10 kilometers with the broken bone, but no one trusted her. Everyone said that she was a liar, and even her own country people humiliated her. But later it was proved that her broken bone was true. She had two kinds of tolerance. First one, the physical tolerance. She tolerated the pain until the end of the race. And second one is the mental tolerance. She tolerated the humiliation and she continued to have her spirits up. So just because she's an athlete, she could able to have the tolerating sense. So referring again to the point, sports can teach the sense of tolerance to the vulnerable group of youth. Thank you.
First speaker for Hillwood.
Sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire, the power to unite people in a way that little else does. Above all, sport speaks to the youth in a language they understand. These were the words of Nelson Mandela, who not only guided his country's team to the victory at the Rugby World Cup in the year 1995, but also used sport as a tool to unite his nation. A very good afternoon, Honorable Panel of Adjudicators and Honorable Members of the House. I, as the first speaker, will be defining the keywords of our topic, which is sport is an effective tool to teach the senses of human solidarity to the vulnerable youth group. And I will be defining the keywords and introducing our interpretation of today's topic. My second speaker will be focusing on the need to inculcate the senses of human solidarity in the vulnerable youth groups, while my third speaker will be proving to you with examples as to why we say sport is a much more effective tool above all else to perform this task. Human solidarity is defined as an awareness of shared interests, objectives, standards, and sympathy, creating a sense of psychological unity among groups or classes. In other words, it is the ties in society that bind people together as one and unite the nation, unite people. And now, in today's world more than ever, we need human solidarity to be practiced because it is a value based on social inclusion, justice, and equality. Vulnerable youth groups According to a research done by the University of Medical College in India, there are three main aspects that relate to the vulnerability of the youth, based on the three main factors of dependence. The first being emotional aspect, the second being material aspect, and the third being social aspect. So whether it be poverty, depression, or even drug addiction, sport is one of the most effective tools that can be used to help the youth overcome their vulnerabilities and embrace their true strength in their solidarity. Because there are other tools like social media, school education, and even entertainment that can be used to inculcate the senses of human solidarity. But why we say sport is much more effective is because of the fact that it not only talks the talk, but also walks the walk. In conclusion, we need not look far and beyond to prove the accuracy of our topic. The OVEP Debater 2020 itself is the perfect example to prove to us that all groups of youth can stand together in solidarity and celebrate the true value and excellence of sport and Olympics. Thank you.
That sports is the most effective tool to teach tolerance to youth who are affected by temporary problems. At this stage, youth suffer transient problems such as puberty, emotional instability, tender relationships, identity crisis, and even crucial life decision making. These are pressuring upon a young adult due to their inability to understand the circumstances and changes they undergo physically, mentally, and psychologically. These traumas can leave a young person feeling uncomfortable in their own body, discriminated, and worthless. Why do we define such traumas dangerous? It is because these vulnerable youth are both self-destructive and socially aggressive. They can be either the prey or the predator or both. On one hand, jeopardized youth tend to become victims of suicide, teen pregnancy, and even violence. For example, the WHO report states that each year in developing regions, 21 million girls between the ages of 15 to 19 become pregnant, and 12 million of them give birth. On the other hand, vulnerable youth become youth offenders due to developing antisocial beliefs and involving in illegal activities such as drug usage, human trafficking, and mafias. As per the statistics released by the Department of Prisons in 2017, there are 6,812 unconvicted prisoners between the ages of 16 to 22 and 22,556 men and women between the ages of 22 to 30 are charged for crime. As said by Helen Keller, tolerance is the first principle. It is the spirit which conserves all the best which men think. Tolerance strengthens the armors of these young, vulnerable youth. The best way to realize and learn tolerance is sports, which is why all institutions related and involving youth promote sports. High schools, colleges, universities, and even workplaces have consist of sports clubs. Tolerance is learned in sports when obeying the commands of the leader despite clashing with their personal opinions. This tolerance learned helps youth to tolerate situations at home and listen to advice from parents when needed. The flow of thoughts and energy enhances with team work and creates tolerance in themselves. It further acts as a healing method to overcome traumas related to attachments, self-worth, physical insecurities, and many more. It also strengthens and promotes the well-being of youth. Therefore, youth learn tolerance through sports and no longer become vulnerable in the society. Thank you.
With the connection, inviting Swairi Atukorala, the second speaker for Hillwood.
A very good afternoon to the honorable panel of judges and the fellow members of the House. I, as the second speaker, will be further elaborating on our topic, which is sport is an effective tool to teach the vulnerable youth groups a sense of human solidarity. Sticks in a bundle are unbreakable. That is why those who are weak, those who are vulnerable, and those who are susceptible should be made to feel like they belong. This is why they should be given the senses of solidarity. And what better way to do this than through sports, where your mind and your body communicate with others without speech. Go back to your childhood. Did you ever have to beg? Did you ever have to do unpaid work? Were you living in an area that was constantly being bombed? Were you living with a disability or disorder? If you weren't, you'll never be able to know what these children go through. Let me guide you through their lives. Imagine living on a street with no food to eat and no shelter to call your own. Imagine the dangers that you'll be in. You'll be susceptible to drugs and all kinds of crimes, to diseases, disorders, and all forms of abuse. This was the life of Mike Tyson, the famous boxing player. He grew up in the wrong side of America in the worst sort of poverty. And by the time he was 13, he had got involved in 30 different crimes and was arrested 30 times. But within that boxing ring, he was not poor. He was no criminal. Within that boxing ring, he was made to feel like he belonged. He was given the senses of unity, harmony, and solidarity. Now, let's take off our boxing gloves and step into a life where you can't hear a word that is uttered around you. Welcome to the life of Chamari Kuda Balage, a swimmer with hearing impairments. She was accepted into an all-hearing swimming team, where she swam and practiced with other swimmers. And for her excellence in this sport, she was made the captain of this team. And at meets, the meet officials would signal the start to her in sign language. All this made her feel like she truly belonged. And that is why she states at an interview, "My family, my friends, and my teammates all made me feel like I belonged. Now, let us end our journey. We'll stop there. And this is why we believe sport is an effective tool to teach the vulnerable youth groups a sense of solidarity. In conclusion, I will quote the famous Russian playwright Anton Chekhov. This was his view on sports. Sports are positively essential. It is healthy to engage in sports. It is beautiful and liberal. Liberal in the sense that nothing integrates social classes like sports do. Thank you.
Yes, please, Mr. Haritha, you can call the next speaker.
The third and last speaker for Chundikuli girls, Volini Kumaravel.
Sports is an effective stage to teach the senses of tolerance to the vulnerable youth group. Good afternoon, all. Each stage of life was created differently in the creation itself, and youthhood, during its biological transition into adulthood, was designed as a vulnerable stage open to the external negative force. A.J. Yulani, author of many best-selling books on education, said, "Our job is not to prepare the students for something, but to help them prepare themselves for anything." Anything also means the adverse influence. WHO defines the youth as 15 to 24-year age group. This is the transition stage, which involves physical, sexual, psychological, and social development all taking place at the same time. The youth have an enormous mental and physical strength with a strong desire to explore the world around them. They like to taste everything they come across, but their brain is still developing, especially the section for reasoning and rationalizing. Due to these, vulnerable youths are prone to engage in unhealthy and antisocial behaviors like rebellious to social norms, alcoholism, drug addiction, frustration over failures, and even suicide. This leads them to the destructive path. It cannot be tackled only by making the society better, but also by empowering their tolerance. Tolerance is a capacity to endure continuing subjugation towards these kind of bad influences. Sports is an effective and well-recognized tool to develop tolerance. Olympic gold medalist Alison Felix said, "Sports have taught me so much, everything from work ethic to time management and dealing with failure and defeat." By involving in sports, youth develop to tolerance their failure and defeat and accept them as part and parcel of their life. They realize that we can't sit and mourn the failures forever. Sports teach them to learn from the failure and move on to the next attempt. Sports help in developing social skills of working in team for a common goal, adjusting and giving up our own personal interest for a common interest. This teaches them to tolerate the shortcomings of their teammates. These vulnerable youth with zero tolerance start to break social norms. But sports make them learn to obey the rules. The excessive force they have make them more vulnerable than the adults. But when involving in sports and focusing on achieving a goal, their excessive force is channeled into socially accepted ventures. The sports help in developing tolerance to their opponents. They start to love even the other. It develops the sense of belongingness to their society. Finally, to salvage the vulnerable youth groups from falling into the wrong hands or wrong path, we strongly suggest that we have to involve them more and more into sports. Thank you.
Sanitma Jayasurya, you will be the third speaker for Hillwood.
Shall I start?
Yes, please. Your time is on now.
Out of the fires of desperation burns hope and solidarity. Just imagine yourself as a disabled youth. Wouldn't you feel insecure, like you don't belong? Wouldn't you find it difficult to form positive attachments? Well, I would, and that is exactly how vulnerable youth feel. They lack security, a sense of belonging, unity, and skills to form positive relationships. Yet, all of these things can be obtained by a single human value, solidarity. But we all know that a value is not something that can be imposed. A value is something that has to be experienced and understood by oneself. So, the solution that we offered you today is sport. Because sport offers young people an environment where they could find security, unity, positive relationships, and a sense of belonging. And it is very much evident that sports are a beautiful way to bring people together despite their differences. Going back to 1936, there stood Jesse Owens, ready to take his third and final attempt to try and qualify for the finals of the running world jump. And at that moment, his German competitor, Luz Long, offers him some advice. And due to these very words, Jesse Owens becomes the gold medalist in his event. And Luz Long, who became the silver medalist, is the first person to congratulate him. Moving on to the 2016 Rio Olympics, suddenly the 5,000-meter American athlete Abby D'Agostino tumbles with Nikki Hamlin. Abby could have scrambled herself up and kept running, but no, she stopped. She helped Nikki up and urged her to run. And later, Nikki did the same thing for Abby. And by now, we are also aware as to how Nelson Mandela used a single sport to unite an entire nation. All these are glorious events that showcase the remarkable power sport has to unite people. And we must not forget about Olympism, the very life attitude that we talk of today. Through sport, you learn, through solidarity, you learn to lend a friendly hand, you learn to respect, and through solidarity, you can pursue excellence because united we stand, divided we lose. And through solidarity, you can ensure fair play, and through that, you can obtain joy of effort by enjoying your journey. All these are reasons as to why sport is an effective tool to teach the senses of solidarity to the vulnerable youth groups. Because the vulnerable need to be united, and sports are clearly the best option that we have for this. Because sports can create hope where there was once only despair. Thank you.
It's available for the sum ups for the respective schools.
Summarizing, hello.
Hold on. Was the time available for the summing up?
Mr. Haritha,
Yes, please.
summarizing timing for the Hillwood College,
Yes.
2 minutes and 35 seconds.
Okay.
And for the Chundikuli Girls College, summarizing timing is 2 minutes and 51 seconds.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dinky. I hope that's clear to the schools. First, inviting Isuri Mapa of Hillwood for the summing up.
Imagine yourself in a situation like this. You being raised in a poverty-stricken, dangerous neighborhood, where at the mere age of 13, you were even forced to be involved in an armed robbery. But then one day, you were introduced to boxing. You were given the opportunity to overcome your vulnerabilities, not through violence, but through sport. Next, put yourself in the shoes of a deaf child. For all your life, the only thing that you see in other people's eyes when they look at you is sympathy. But after being introduced to swimming, after becoming a swimmer, although you cannot hear the crowd cheering for you, you know that this time they're not looking at you with sympathy. They're looking at you with respect and admiration. These aren't just stories that appear in your imagination. These are the stories of real-life athletes that my second speaker has brought out today in his speech. The first was the story of Mike Tyson, and the second was the story of Chamari Kudabali. Next, let me bring to your attention the examples that my third speaker has brought out today. The first one was the story of Jesse Owens and Luce Law, who believed in the power of unity and human solidarity and used the Olympic Games in the year 1936 to teach the entire world the feeling of unity and the power of solidarity. The second was the story of Rio Olympics 2016, where the two young athletes, Nikki and Abby, helped each other overcome their vulnerabilities and taught a valuable lesson to the entire world. They taught us the power of human solidarity. Nelson Mandela, whom I mentioned in my opening speech, used sport as a tool to unite the entire nation of South Africa. The stories of these athletes prove to us that sport can be used to accomplish much more than just physical feats. It can provide us with a sense of unity, a sense of belonging, and it can make us realize the true importance of human solidarity. Because sport teaches the youth of the world that our true strength lies in our solidarity. In conclusion, I quote the words of John Donne, a famous English poet. "No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent." Thank you.
Inviting Joan Sophia Paul Suresh for the sum up on behalf of Chundikuli girls.
Good afternoon again. I'm here to summarize and re-emphasize what my team members have said so far. According to my point, young people are being marginalized each and every day just because we are living in a corrupted society. It is unavoidable. So it is our responsibility to overcome these problems and become achievers in life. For that, I have mentioned a very clear example of Justina Kowalczyk about the physical and mental issues and how she tolerated it. According to my second speaker, she says transient problems pressurize young people due to lack of understanding in the surroundings, and they undergo social, mental, and psychosocial physical issues, and this makes them vulnerable, and that in place makes them socially aggressive and self-destructive. For that, she mentioned examples of child pregnancy and about illegal drug usage and human trafficking from the report of prisons and WHO. She further mentioned the quote of Helen Keller and how sport shields them from the harshness of reality and gives them the sense of tolerance. According to the third speaker, she further elaborated on how among the different stages of life, the youthhood is designed as vulnerable stage with its biological transition into the adulthood. It is said, young bloods run wild. It is unavoidable. Their decisions and emotions are strong and are easily prone to make mistakes by the quick decisions they make. A 2020 report by WHO reveals that mental health accounts for the 16% of the disease in young age between 10 to 19 years. In this context, sports serve as an excellent tool to teach tolerance to the vulnerable youth in different ways. For that, the example of Olympic gold medalist Elise Felix has been put forward by her. She said that sports have taught so much from everything from work ethic to time management, dealing with failure and defeat. Referring again to the point that I told about Corona, the recent researchers say that the young people or the people who have engaged in sports have less chances of suicide during the Corona pandemic because each and everyone is inside the house and they are depressed mentally. So these make them to tolerate all those problems and create a very happy and a wonderful environment, a very suitable environment to live. So, referring again to the topic of our team, sport is a very effective tool to teach the sense of tolerance to the vulnerable youth. Thank you.
It's an effective tool, vulnerable youth groups, solidarity, tolerance, areas where you can relate to beyond the sporting arena, expand the boundaries, go into society. There is so much differences there. All that the speakers had to be pretty sure of to talk convincingly. I think they've done a lot of preparations. President of the National Olympic Committee of Sri Lanka, sir, are you there? Suresh Subramaniam, are you with us?